Hello, Kako.
Hello.
I'm Mike Gabbard. I'm the chair of the Senate Energy Environment Committee, and my co-chair this afternoon is Representative Denny Kaufman, the chair of the House Committee of Energy and Environmental Protection. And we'd like to welcome you to this joint Senate-House informational briefing of the committees on energy, environment, water and land, and also Hawaiian affairs. First, I'd like to introduce my Senate committee co-chairs and also members. We have Senator Galutaria on my left,
Hello.
Senator Solomon,
Aloha.
also Senator Kahele,
Hello.
and we also have Senator Aspero with us today, and Senator Ryan. April. And Rep. Kaufman, if you'd like to introduce your members.
You see, I guess to my far left and your right, Representative Mark Nakashima. And Jerry Chang was here, Rep. Chang. Rep. Robert Herkes, Miguel Rivera, and who else? That's it from the House.
Okay. The purpose of this informational briefing is to hear from Innovations Development Group and Mililani Trask on their native-to-native business model as it applies to geothermal development in Hawaii. We will also be hearing from the co-chairs of the Geothermal Working Group about their findings on the potential of geothermal energy as a resource in the state for electricity production. This informational briefing follows a briefing that these presenters held in Hilo.
That's fine, we're good.
A few housekeeping measures before we get started. For those of you folks that are here for the first time, bathrooms, women around the corner to your left, men around the corner to your right. Kindly silence all of your electronic devices. If you'd like to follow along with the hearing notice online and read the presentations, you can access it all at www.capital.hawaii.gov. And also this briefing is being broadcast live on Oahu on channel 53 and tape delayed to the neighbor islands. You can check with Public Access Room at 587-0478 in a week for the rebroadcast schedule. So first we'll have the presentations, and there'll be some Q&A from the House members and Senate members after the presentations. And so if you would, Pat Brandt and Robbie Cabral and Mililani Trask and Lee Irwin, if you please come up. And I'll just give a brief introduction, some background on Pat Brandt is the CEO and on the board of directors for Innovations Development Group. Her previous experience includes serving as the chief of staff for the OHA chairman of the board. Robbie Cabral is the founder and chair of the board of directors of Innovations Development Groups. She also serves as their senior advisor. Mililani Trask is the principal of Indigenous Consultants, LLC, and also the Indigenous and Community Advisor for Innovations Development Group. She's a noted Hawaiian attorney and international human rights advocate. And Lee Irwin is the Chief Financial Officer of Innovations Development Group. He's also a partner with the international CPA firm Irwin, Cabrina, and Al. Welcome. Aloha.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me start off by saying thank you. I know how busy everybody is, and we really appreciate you giving us the time to share with you the information that we have today. I especially would like to mahalo House Energy Committee Chair Denny Kaufman. Thank you, mahalo. And the Senate Energy Committee Chair, Mr. Mike Gabbard, Brickwood Galutaria, and Pohai Ryan, who has done a lot to help us with the logistics of setting this up and making this possible. So thank you very much for all the staff who've helped you. Purpose of this briefing, we have a lot of information to share, and I would ask you, we're very cognizant of your time, so we brought a lot of information together, and if possible, I'd like to hold questions till the end. We have ample time set up to be sure that we have time to sit with you and answer any questions you might have. We are a Hawaii-based company established in 1998. The majority, almost all, I would say 90% of our owners and our key core people are Native Hawaiian, and the company is majority Native Hawaiian owned. We have the profile and experience in developing geothermal energy in the Pacific and Hawaii. And I want you to, and our staff will tell you a little bit more about that as we go. Our reason for coming today is to give you our ideas, our experience about new approaches to renewable energy development in the Pacific that can benefit our state. We want to introduce IDG and our native to native community collaboration model for energy development, something that we have rolled out in New Zealand and is very successful. And we'd like to do it here. We want to propose a new state policy and approach for energy development through joint venture partnerships with the state and the private sector. And it's especially important because Hawaiian Electric has just issued requests for proposals or information for 50 megawatt geothermal projects in the island of Maui and the big island of Hawaii. So the information is current. I want you to know that geothermal energy, or the idea of it, is not new. It's been here, been talked about for a long time. And our history, Hawaiian newspapers and records show that in 1881, King Kalakaua met with Thomas Edison in New York City to talk about geothermal as a potential energy source for the electricity needs in the Hawaiian Kingdom. And looking at whatever technology was available at the time, which was probably wires and not underground cables, but looking at the idea as something that could resolve some of the problems or some of the needs that we had in the islands. I want to introduce at this point Robbie Cabral, who is our founding board member, to introduce the rest of our very impressive team. We have an interesting team. We've been on different sides of the table in many community discussions with politicians as well as policymakers in the state. And for this project, we've all come together. We have hard and long and noisy meetings, but in the end, come to conclusions that would benefit our people and our state. So with that, I'd like to introduce Roberta Cabral.
Mahalo, Senator and House members. IDG has been around, as Pat said, since 1998. Our CEO is Pat Brandt. As you know, Pat brings a background where she's worked with both Governor Ariyoshi and Governor Waihee. So she brings the value of working with government to our team. We've got Lee Irwin, who's our CPA, our CFO, a partner of Irwin, Cabrina, and Au as well, one of the big 8 CPA firms in the islands. Next to Lee, you'll see Cy Bridges. Cy is a renowned kumahula as well as a cultural expert. Also a vice president at the Polynesian Cultural Center. And Cy brings the cultural component to our business model so that we're always operating in a very pono manner. We have also in our advisory group, Millie Lenny Trask. Millie needs no introduction. Everyone knows Millie. She's been around for a long time, serving as an advocate for our people both in the United Nations and here in Hawaii. And Millie is our expert and basically our conduit to New Zealand, where she has been very successful in opening the doors for IDG in New Zealand and other indigenous communities. We have there a gentleman, Kaylee Irwin, also a CPA, an investment analyst, and also the son of Lee Irwin. Very proud of this part Hawaiian boy. He's one of the few Hawaiians working on Wall Street, structuring major transactions, a Punahou graduate and a graduate also of Sloan, MIT with an MBA. Myself, which I put this project or the company together back in '98 with the view of trying to develop Hawaiian resources. Also, we have Oz Stender. Ozzy's also been around for a very long time, background in both Bishop Estate and former CEO of Campbell. If you note, we have both Millie and Ozzy on the team for geothermal, and those of us who've been around for a lifetime know the history. Millie was one of the key attorneys for the Pele Defense Fund that basically fought Ozzy, and their case went to the Supreme Court when Ozzy, as the CEO of Campbell Estate, wanted to develop the Waukeleo Puna Forest. We have next to Ozzy, Patricia Medina Talbert, who's also in the audience, who flew in from New York. Patricia's also a Kamehameha, also attended Kamehameha schools, a licensed attorney in both New York and New Jersey, a retired Superior Court judge from the state of New Jersey, also a former Deputy Attorney General from the state of New Jersey. And since Patricia's retirement, she has opted to join the IDG team to represent us on the East Coast, primarily in the area of structuring our investments. We have also Loretta Lovell, who is our solicitor from New Zealand, part Maori, a commercial attorney, formerly with the Russell McVeigh, which is one of the premium law firms. She has been working very closely with us and working with Maori to develop their geothermal resources. Next to Loretta, we have Dr. Sadiq Zarouk. Sadiq is the senior professor of geosciences at the University of Auckland. He is also one of the world's leading experts on geothermal engineering. And Sadiq is a story that his family fled from, where was it, Iraq, about 15, 20 years ago, and he found himself living in New Zealand, and he's very close to the Maori people. He works very closely in helping to identify their geothermal resources and helping them to understand what value they have. On our team in New Zealand, as well as what we're thinking about for Hawaii, is to bring the GNS and the SKM companies to Hawaii to be our partners, our technical and science partners. GNS is a world-class geoscience company. They have projects all over the world where they provide the first stage of exploratory. Also, we have Sinclair Knight Mertz, SKM, which is also a global company. Both are rooted in New Zealand. They've been at geothermal development for a very long time, and they bring tremendous credibility in terms of the knowledge that's needed in this very, very technical field. These are the current projects that IDG has under our belt in New Zealand. If you look at the left there, you'll see that Taheke 8C and adjoining blocks in Rotorua. We have just completed our drilling. We're entering into a resource consenting or permitting process right now. It's been a project where IDG has been a senior consultant for the Taheke Maori Trust, who are owners of a geothermal field and block, and we helped to procure a transaction with them and one of the country's leading geothermal producers, Contact Energy. And our role with them is purely a consultancy. To the right there, you'll see the A8D Ahufenua Trust, Kawarau. That particular project, IDG is not only the developer of record, but we are joint venture partners. That particular project, we've got about a 50 megawatt potential based on our science assessments. Kawarau is known as one of the top 3 world-class fields in the world. On the bottom there, on the northern tip of the southern island, we've got an area called Waka Puaka, which IDG holds the exclusive rights to 3,300 acres, and we are exploring wind farm potential on that site as well. All of these projects are done in conjunction with Maori partners. And just to give you a glimpse of what we've done, to take away the fear of the science perception of toxicity, spills, and whatnot, we're showing you that in the area of Taheke and Rotorua, what we have coexisting is a hill of sheep and lamb field, and it coexists with our drilling, and you'll see it right there. So you'll see that the technology today is such that most of the carbon emissions is reinjected back into the reinjection wells, and very, very little emissions as compared to fossil fuel and other types of renewables. We have here another Maori Trust resource here. You'll see the Ka22 bore there. That bore with the steam has between 12 and 15 megawatts in that one bore. And you'll see the Ka22 site there in the map in the area of the block of the Maori Trust that we're in partnership with. If you note the name Te Ahi o Maui, it refers to our genealogy and our history between Maori and Hawaiians. Maoris look at us as their tukana. We see them as our teina. And the idea is to work together in creating models that best address protocols and protections for Maori resources. For Maori, like Hawaiians, it's not just about generating geothermal and making profits on it. It's about cultural protections of things that are considered legacy to the culture. We have here the Waipuku Mahana Trust as well, and we are just engaged in putting together and procuring a transaction on that. And this is the Waka Puaka.
The native to native community collaborative model is actually the private property of the IDG and the indigenous consultants. It's a business model that was developed over the last 15 years, and it came about because of an initiative at the United Nations. The UN was tracking climate change and it was tracking peak oil. And there was a priority set globally to move forward with renewable energy development. But we learned that all over the world, in the 7 indigenous regions, there was fighting that was preventing renewable energy development, fighting between indigenous peoples and those who were not, over precious resource development. And so a group was put together to address this, and I was one of them, the expert from the Pacific Basin. Joining me in that work in New Zealand was the IDG. We're primarily Hawaiian natives. The model itself is based on and springs from the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It took us 21 years to pass it. It passed into international law in 2007. What we did was we extrapolated those human rights for economic benefit, human rights for social benefit, human rights that related to culture. And we put together a model that was not only for Hawaiian peoples, but in our state, we are very blessed. We are very blessed in our state. Elsewhere in the world, Native people fight those who are not over resources that are very valuable. But here in the state of Hawaii, the Native and the public together are beneficiaries of the trust. So there is no reason here to have a disagreement of the Native against the non-Native, nor is there any excuse for fighting among Hawaiians, because if you are not a Native Hawaiian of 50% blood, you are still a member of the public, so everyone can benefit here. We define stakeholders in a very different way. We look at the stakeholders in this as being our state government, legislature first, because the legislature is establishing the public policy framework. The DLNR is the one that's looking at subzone designation, state taxes, revenue bonds, and of course the Public Utility and the Land Use Commission. These are state agencies that are critically involved in energy development. They're obviously stakeholders along with the local county and the districts. The local community to the resource we include, and those who are identified here as stakeholders, their needs and rights are addressed in our model. But every resident is an owner, public or native. All those who consider themselves environmentalists who take care of our INA. Large and business community, all are included. Not the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative way, where you look at who the partners are, and it's the hotel industry and Castle and Cook. What happened to all the rest of large and small business? Why were they excluded? Why is labor not acknowledged in the HCEI? Why was agriculture left out? You cannot separate food security from energy security in this globalized world. In all nations of the world, energy is a matter of national security, and tied to it is food security. But we in Hawaii haven't really looked at that or considered it. And of course, our Native Hawaiian community, our Hawaiian agencies, the LNR is for the public, DHHL, OHA. These are agencies that have trust obligations as trustees for our peoples. Next slide, Mods. When we worked on this, we clumped together the human rights of our peoples, culturally, environmentally, socially, and economic rights. And these then were taken and they were put into the globalized model for development, nationally and internationally. And what emerged then are what I like to call the protections when you have geothermal development. Others say that we are imposing restrictions on development, but rather we take a human rights-based approach, and when human rights are respected, you protect them and you honor them. What does culturally appropriate means? Number one, culturally appropriate means that the Native people who are the owners of those resources participate in the development, and those things that are precious to them, those things that are their kuleana, culturally, are under their direct management. So cultural protections will have to be implemented, and it's not just what is in the law, but what is in the Pele defense case. The judicial process, we litigated it, we won it. We need to take it out now and use it. It means that in the project development agreement, in writing, there is an agreement going in that the first thing you look at is culture, to identify and preserve all cultural resources, not just those that are archaeological, that are man-made, but those things that are natural, like Wa'ukeliopuna Forest, like the caldera. Those who came to Hawaii took the most sacred places. It's inappropriate to develop there. We need to look at cultural vehicles to help us, like cultural mapping, which is used all over the world, but not yet in Hawaii. But you first approach your project by identifying the cultural resources so that they can be known. When you retain your project consultants and subcontractors, you hire Native people to work on culture, and you look for those from your own community. And then you design the footprint of the project. Generally speaking, people lay out the project, and whatever is cultural is pushed on the side. But we do it the opposite way, and we always consult with our community first. Environmental sustainability is a requirement of all of our projects. It means that we begin by looking at and fairly addressing the larger picture. Last time around, Hawaiians only looked at cultural right to worship, right to gather. This time around, Aloha Aina requires that we address our own contribution to fuel toxicity, landfill, our problems in Kona in this area. We are contributing to a carbon footprint for our state, Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians alike. Let's address that now. And let's take a look at the increasing costs for fossil fuel, which are presenting a direct threat to our state economic security. We're in a time where there's volatile and unpredictable oil prices. Richard is going to address, when we're through with this, the peak oil crisis. And I'm very concerned when I read the white paper that was done. When we get to this point, we are already past peak production. Lloyd's of London is estimating 52% closure of all small businesses. We cannot allow that to happen in our state. We need to move with all due haste to address this. Our approach to energy self-sufficiency is somewhat different than the way the state is doing it now, because globally there's two approaches. One is the continental approach. The other is the island approach. The continental approach, you always favor a statewide grid because your land is contiguous. But in an island situation, you look to support self-sufficiency island by island. So the first question is asked, what do we do for Oahu self-sufficiency? And how do we help Lanai, Molokai, Maui? Rather than how can we use the wind of Lanai and Molokai to meet Oahu's needs? And no place in the plan was anyone considering the Big Island. We were left out. So environmentally sustainable criterion you will meet, or we do not negotiate with you and we do not work with you. In addition, the third criterion, our developments have to be socially responsible. Point one, you do your environmental work and you do due diligence and you bring in clean and renewable energy. Point number two, when you develop a social resource that belongs to the people, you ensure that there is a community collaborative partnership that is used so that the people in the community that host the development, that own the resource, get a direct benefit from it. And these benefits are not promises. These benefits have to be worked out before the PDA is signed, and all partners agree to it, and if they do not, they are not welcome to be partners, no matter how much investment money they have, no matter what their technology is. They meet the criterion. Benefit sharing, a fair and reasonable cost to ratepayers. This is the standard and the language used in the federal PURPA law that has never been applied here because the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission doesn't protect us here. The FERC has only jurisdiction in the continent, and no one was here to look after our cost to ratepayers, which now are the highest in the United States of America. It also means that there will be revenue streams for the state trustee. This is a state-owned resource. The state is the trustee of it.
That's right.
When revenues are returned from it, the law requires that the trustee inventory and protect the trust resources and develop it to the primary benefit of the beneficiaries. The state now is being victimized by our system. The state sees energy as a debt stream, but really the state owns it and is the trustee. We should have it a revenue stream. What do we mean by direct uses for business? When you engage in mega development, you will find that it benefits few, because mega development is just that. It's a large geothermal plant. You're going to develop the resource, run transmission lines out, and get it to the grid. Proliferation and provision for small business is simply not part of mega development, but it is when we develop. Here's a good example of it. The health and wellness sector right now pumps all over the US and right here in Hawaii. Steam baths are a natural byproduct of geothermal. Hawaiians have always bathed in the steam here, but we have nothing to augment our industry here. We could have this, slide mods. In terms of other direct uses of steam, we have a timber industry on the Big Island. We can use energy for that. Timber will dry at 160 degrees. Right down the way from this timber drying plant, you want to have our next slide, which is food drying. Food drying occurs at 80 degrees. If you talk with Andrea Gill over at our D-bed, she'll tell you that this is referred to as the cascading effect. You first pump the energy 160, then down to 80. My favorite, whenever you develop geothermal energy, and this is why I would have it on state lands, you need to put in, next to this area, a renewable energy industrial park. In our state, we don't have a single technology for renewable energy that we generate here. Every wind turbine, every solar panel, everything has to be imported to Hawaii on ships that are consuming fossil fuel. We need to commit when we develop that we will make way for our business, that we will commit to providing the energy so that we can have industrial parks. And thanks to Richard Ha, who has educated our team, that this is an area where we need to develop fertilizer, because we will have the ammonia and the hydrogen from geothermal. We're losing our agriculture on the Big Island because they cannot pay the fuel and they cannot pay the fertilizer. Why are we even importing it? We have the ability to create fertilizer for our farms. And here we have our last direct benefit. This is aquaponic greenhouse. This would have been very appropriate in a place like Puna, that is an ag area. But these are real businesses that are attendant to geothermal development, and they need to be required. They need to be required when you negotiate your deal. We need to take a look at where we were in the past, why we had to kill geothermal, and where we're going in the future. We had no alternatives as Hawaiians, and I'm very proud that I was the attorney for the kupunas who marched and got arrested. I left my law practice in Honolulu, went to Big Island, and there I represented it. They came to develop geothermal. They never talked with the community. They didn't recognize our right to worship. They arrested Auntie Emily Naiole, our city councilwoman, because she was picking flowers to make a lei po'o. They never considered the impact on our belief system and our right to worship. They brought cheap and filthy technology. And during the exploratory period, not once but twice it exploded. We had to bring in the civil defense. We had to evacuate all of Puna. The second time around, a pregnant woman couldn't get out in time and her child died. We lost a child on the Big Island, and that is what finally stopped it. So there was no benefit for local people, the public, the Native Hawaiian, the residents. There was nothing, because there was no vision for self-sufficiency for our state. Let's look at what we gained from that. We did the Pele defense case and we won. So we now have judicial precedent protecting our rights. What we have to do as Hawaiian is take the standard and put it into the development model. After that, we went to the state legislature. We came here, and with the help of the legislature, we changed the EIS law. When we were fighting the Pele case, EIS required that you look at the impact on the trees and the insects, but you never looked at the impact on the culture. Now you do, because it's been amended into our law. Now we know that when you develop geothermal, you take care to protect the surface areas so you don't bring in invasive species. Go to Puna. All of the endemic species surrounding the plant are gone. It is all invasive now, and it came in with the development. We believe that this model that we created for Native people is very appropriate here in Hawaii, because we work only with Native trustees, and here the Native and the public are both beneficiaries, and there is only one trustee, and it is the state itself. We have been doing, based on our model, we have to do community workshops. We've gone out to the community. We've done 2 workshops in Puna and also in Hilo. We've been working with our labor allies on Big Island. They have taken the labor, our surveys out, and we're proposing in our surveys, and it's in the materials, we're asking questions of the people on the Big Island. If this were a model that returned benefits to your community, would you support it? We had about 70, 80 people in Puna. 97% said yes. This is a community hosted, the marches that we held 17 years ago. In Hilo, we had a smaller group, maybe 40. 95% said yes, and our labor poll is 100%. On the 20th of this month, we will be in Maui, and we're gathering the data. There's no data available in our state as to how the people feel about this. We're the first one undertaking this data, but we're going to share it with everyone, including DBED. When we talk about what our projects give to the community, and this is mandated, in all of our projects there is established a community trust, because you have to share the benefit with everyone in the community. In a 50 megawatt project, we give to the community trust $1.25 million a year for the entire 50 years of the lease. Not like what we have on the night, community trust with $2 million in it. Hundreds of millions of dollars will be made. You cannot fairly share that with the community by giving them $1 or $2 million. 50 megawatt project, 50 years, community gets about 65 million. Why? Because we have to ensure that the food bank has money so that they can put food there. We have to pick up the need for the nonprofits working with the elderly and others. They're part of the community, but generally they don't get a benefit. So in our projects, we make sure that the community trust shares benefits with all those who are not affiliated directly with the development. We've seen some of the small business opportunities, steam and energy uses. We require in all of our projects, and we negotiate it in the PDA, that there will be job training and on-site employment opportunities. We don't make promises. It is in writing. And when we negotiated with some of our partners in Aotearoa, they said, well, sure, we'll give you the geothermal engineering jobs. How many Maoris do you have with that degree? Winking at me over the table, I said, we have none, but we're graduating our first class in 6 years. And until that time, we'll take every other job. Because you need secretaries, don't you? You need all kinds of people to employ, so we will have it in writing that you will hire those people from our community. We give scholarships in education as well. That's why we're training Maori engineers right now. Where are we? We're a state with a terrible energy crisis. We're the most oil-dependent state in the Union, and so we are the most energy insecure state. We rely on imported fuel for 90% of our needs. We're exporting $7 billion. We're paying the highest rates in the US. And because of all these things, we have a significant economic and public safety security issue. We also have a serious fiscal crisis. The states and the county are they're not capable of putting financing into this. We have a fiscal crisis right now impacting all of our counties. We don't have the money to invest in energy development. We are already cutting critical services. We're allocating it there. You know this better than I. Next slide, Ryan. On the other hand, we're greatly blessed because Hawaii has vast and very valuable resources. Of all the states in the Union, Hawaii may be the most wealthy state in terms of natural resources.
That's right.
And we're also blessed because we own it all. We are not in a situation on the continent where Indians have their own here. Here we have only one trust. Geothermal, defined as minerals, it is in the ceded land trust. OTEC, ocean thermal, within 3 miles, anything there is submerged lands, it belongs to the state. So OTEC title, surge, wave energy, and geothermal belong to the people of this state. Legislature, we're the ones that own it.
Yes, we
Wind
do.
and solar, we only can claim it in the trust if it is on our state lands. So if we find wind tunnel or 5F lands, we have it. But these are great blessings that all over the world people pray that they had. We have it here, but we are not utilizing it yet. If you take a look at our policy framework, the Energy Agreement from 2008 and the Clean Energy Initiative, you'll find something very interesting. These two energy agreements were put together by a very small group of people. When I looked at it, I was surprised because policy for a state comes from the legislature. It doesn't come from the executive, the DCCA, and HECO.
That's right.
But it comes from the legislature. When I looked at both of the policy framework documents, there was no priority set for the development of our own state renewable resources. There was none. The other priority missing was firm power, which is your base power for your security in any state. So this is why I came to the conclusion that we needed a new policy, perhaps, to address the trust obligation of the state. The energy issues we have to confront. Right now, state is a trustee. The state has no inventory of our state-owned energy. We have a breach of trust here. If we focus on a breach, we won't have time to work on a solution. Our proposal is, being aware that there may be a breach, let's proceed quickly to address and remedy it. State has no capital to invest and develop. The state itself does not have expertise in energy development for geothermal and in many other areas. In addition, because of this, the state does not have private sector, energy, and tech partners. And all over the world, when you develop this, you need that. No one, anywhere in the world, has all the capacity to develop. It is now handled in a globalized way, so it is international. These things are critical issues for our state, but our state is not well prepared to address them. But the good news is that we are. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Robbie and Lee to take a look at a public and private partnership proposal. And I just wanted to end by saying, I'm coming back later though. We have talked with DHHL chair. We have met with Bill Isla of the DLNR. We're on our way to see the trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, so we've tried to be inclusive. We also have spoken with some of the commissioners of the DHHL.
And I just want to say before you proceed that the governor did sign into law the Public Lands Development Corporation,
Yes, I saw
which
that.
is now an arm of DLNR, which could expedite these kinds of private-public partnerships.
Thank you for introducing the legislature.
You're very welcome.
Legislation Senator. Good job for us.
Well, I was a part of all that with the Pele Defense Fund and
You
the whole
sure
bit.
were.
I've been around a long time. I've seen it.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Not getting
A new
arrested.
day in Hawaii.
There you go.
Okay, let's hit it.
For a point of clarification, Millie referred to the binding Bible in the contract as a PDA. So for those of you that didn't understand what she meant, a PDA refers to Project Development Agreement, and it's the binding Bible or contract that we utilize to bring in all of the partners to do the transaction. So under a public-private partnership proposal, IDG is proposing to establish a partnership with the state for the development of geothermal resources as an asset of the Ceded Lands Trust, utilizing state lands for development by way of a 50-year lease. The state is the trustee of the Ceded Lands Trust. Public, Native Hawaiians are shareholders. Ceded lands inventory should prioritize geothermal ceded lands. The state lands, which we've identified as DLNR and DHHL, could be contributed to a partnership for the development of geothermal resources. What we envision is somewhere around 6% of a project that would be used to pay the state for the use of its lands. So we're talking 6% of the gross revenues of any given project for a 50-year lease. The state agency owning the land would receive an interest in the project based on the value of its contribution of the land asset, an annual land lease rent from the partnership fixed for the term of the lease, as we've identified for 50 years. At the end of the lease, the project ownership goes to the state. The state would have the opportunity to optimize its land asset value for higher income than standard lease rents. IDG agrees to sell its equity portion at discounted fair market to the state within the first 15 years of operation, giving the state an ownership interest in the project and earning more of the annualized cash flows, as well as giving the state a first right of refusal on all other equity within the project. This would create a revenue stream for the state during current fiscal crisis and in the future.
I like that.
Okay, IDG, the developer responsibility. IDG has a working model for successful geothermal development consistent with trust fiduciary obligations. As we mentioned, our 2 projects, now going on 3 in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is based on working with Maori trusts. And through that experience, developing our theme, which is being a community collaborative, that there is a interest here, as Millie pointed out, as well as working with natives as one of the shareholders, specialized protocols and protections to address native issues. Under our proposal, IDG will be the project developer. We will secure our strategic technical and science partners, which will be responsible for the exploratory, drilling, plant construction, and generation, operations, and maintenance. All geothermal producers understand that the first stages, which are the exploratory through the drilling, are the riskiest part of any development. 80% of projects don't work. So when you roll the die, you hope that you find the right resources to be able to generate. So there is a lot of risk here. And there's no guarantee that when you put a bore in that averages somewhere between $3 and $5 million a bore, that we're gonna find something. And everyone here that is familiar with even our chants, as Senator Solomon is, that we talk about Tutupele and how she moves. Right. And scientifically, it's the same concept. IDG will secure and structure all capital to a project, as well as arrange for senior debt. As Millie pointed out earlier, community benefits. There are 2 RFPs, let me say 1 RFP coming out for Maui that was announced by Hawaiian Electric, HECO, and they have an RFI presently out for the Hawaii Island, both for 50 megawatts. On the basis of a 50 megawatt project, we have, under the law, the state receives for its mineral right royalty payments to the tune of 10% of the gross income of a project. The state then divvies it up between themselves through DLNR, the counties, as well as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Under our program, we are proposing, as Millie pointed out, the benefits, understanding the significance of partnering with our community. That's the public and Native Hawaiians. We are going to dedicate, under our model, 2% of the gross income to go back through a community trust to benefit the local community, the host community of which is hosting the actual development, the Native Hawaiian community, and for environmental stewardship. We envision under a 50 megawatt project that 2% to represent somewhere around 1.25 million annually.
I'd like to interject there, Rob. What I am proposing relative to the trust is we seed that with $5 million by all of the developers, and then continue with the $1.25 million a year thereafter. I'm arguing with them right now about that.
So a 50 megawatt geothermal project projected cash flow. This is the way it would look. So 10% under the law, the state receives 10% of the gross income of any geothermal development. Under our proposal, as we've pointed out, we would see or envision the state's contribution of its land assets into the project, and they would receive 6% on the gross of the income, as opposed to utilizing standard lease models. We're saying, state, you folks are partnering, you folks should receive a part of the cash flows. And it's like twice to 3 times larger than standard lease rents. So you're getting a piece of the pie right off the bat. We're gonna commit right off what we believe the land value is worth. 2% there for the community trust for community capacity building. To run the project, we're saying that we need 54% for operations, debt service, and tax.
Taxes include income tax only. What's also included in there is general excise tax. But what should be considered is all of the jobs that will be created, all of the income tax that will be generated from those jobs, the retaining of the $7 billion in exported costs to buy bunker fuel, and the generation of economic opportunities within the geothermal footprint that would generate taxes as well.
And the last being the cost of the capital and developers' equity would represent 28% of the gross income. So as you see, just through this chart, we're dedicating under our model 18% of the gross income. That's not even factoring the deduction of tax or debt service or cost. We're right off the bat saying the state deserves 18%, and you would be familiar with what that cash flow would be. Mats? So the estimated annual benefit to the state agency for a 50 megawatt geothermal development, at 10% of gross revenues, we're talking of somewhere around 5.5 million per year that the state would be paid for the use of the geothermal mineral right. For the project revenues for land contribution, we're talking about 6% of the gross revenues from the project, which is somewhere around 3.5 million. Our consultants tell us that to lease the lands from the state for what we need under a standard model, we wouldn't have to pay more than 1.25 to 1.5 to be within fair market of leasing the state lands. So you'll see that we are very serious about what we say in terms of sharing cash flows with the state for the use of the lands. Total revenues to the state on a 50 megawatt project is somewhere around $9 million per annum from the date of production. So if you take a look at $9 million, we have 46 years because we need 4 years dedicated to get through pre-development and the development process and to the first year of operation. So if you look at there, we have $414 million on one 50 megawatt project. Estimated revenues for use of state land, as we've cited, that there's been announcements by Hawaiian Electric for the 50 megawatt firm power RFP coming out in Maui. There is an RFI out on the Big Island, as we said earlier, for 50 megawatts. What IDG would recommend if we had our way would be to recommend 100 megawatt, because we're talking about economies of scale. We're talking about being able to deliver more electricity from a firm power resource, and it just makes more sense to do a larger project than to piecemeal this. That would mean that for a 100 megawatt project, there'd be far more cash flow to the state for use of land, as well as for our royalty payments under the law. If you look at the 6%, it shows that we're making $3.5 million payment for the use of the land, and over 46 years, that's valued at about 161 million. We're suggesting that there's 2,000 megawatts of non-peak time used for electricity in our state. 2,400 megawatts is for peak. If we were to take 50% of the non-peak 2,000 megawatts at 1,000 megawatts and developed geothermal as a primary base load, we're talking about firm power that's sustainable, that could generate the state of Hawaii under 1,000 megawatts about $70 million per year. And over the lifetime of the project, $3.2 billion.
This is, again, the $70 million is a drop in the bucket relative to the state budget.
Exactly.
It's little more than 1/2 of 1%. But you need to consider all the economic multipliers that come from it, the job creations, the income taxes that come from it. And we haven't run the numbers yet, but it's significant relative to what will be generated from a 1,000 megawatts of geothermal power.
And I would guess that those residual benefits could double or more the income that we're talking about. And these estimates are conservative on our part, so a compelling reason to get on board.
Not to mention the $7 billion that's being exported right now to purchase the bunker fuel.
Yeah.
That money could stay in our economy, be good for our people. We're looking here, we've identified the geothermal areas based on published data of geothermal on the island of Maui. And if you note, you've got there DLNR and DHHL lands in its color code. And it falls right in the vicinity of where geothermal has significant activity. And this is what prompted IDG to approach the state, because we believe under our model that the state represents the public. It has a much larger constituency than private land development, and the state could utilize the alternative income from projects like this. And it fits in with the governor's model of creating a new day with, public-private partnerships. Also on the Big Island, we've identified areas as well. State of Hawaii DLNR falls in 3 of the areas. The area that's on the bottom right there, the east area, that's Puna, and you still see that you have state lands that border it, and it's right on top of it. And there's methods and technology today of deviation. When you do bore deviation and you drill. So if you were in the Puna region where the geothermal is, you can still utilize a technology that could access the geothermal from a deviated bores. It's a new technology. And so Mill?
If you take a look, the reason why those other 2 maps were up, the Big Island and Maui, is because those are areas where HELCO has put up RFPs. But when we looked at it, we noticed one interesting thing, that in all these areas, plans were already moving to put private geothermal developments up. But in every one of those areas, you could see that there was state land, DLNR land and DHHL land. If we have state land, why are we now facilitating private land development? So because of this, we suggest that there needs to be a different policy, a different approach to energy development. And we're making the following recommendations to you because you're our state policy makers.
Millie, excuse me one moment. Is Karen Tanaka in the house? Okay, sorry.
The proposal that Robbie and Lee have made to you, I think, is the 6% of the gross revenues. But we need a policy that points out and that affirms that geothermal is the appropriate primary base load firm power source for our island and for our state. This is already the preliminary recommendation of our own Big Island Geothermal Working Group, who you'll be hearing from, the co-chairs. They've already given this indication, and we're 100% behind it. When it comes to affordability for energy, we're currently looking at developing geothermal on the Big Island at 8 cents a kilowatt hour, although ratepayers are being charged 45 cents, 43 cents. But you cannot compare the value of the geothermal with biofuel. Biofuel is 1-to-1 with fossil fuel. So we really should be looking at a cheaper, more affordable, and more plentiful energy source, certainly for Big Island and Maui, but we think it could be done statewide as well. Slide, Ryan. We believe that the state needs to have a policy that is also going to govern and control electricity transmission.
Yeah,
The transmission line may be private property, but who sets the policy as to how the state energy resources are brought to the community is the state and not the private owner of the transmission line. We need a policy that really says that the ratepayer in our state is going to have the benefit of the cost savings. This is what Senator Solomon has been very concerned with as well. We don't have that as a policy in our state, but these are trust assets, and they're supposed to benefit the beneficiaries, the public, and the native. So avoided cost savings should be, under trust law, passed on to the beneficiary and not retained by the ORMAT and the HELCO. We believe that the state needs to enact a policy saying that when you develop public trust energy resources in this state, you will put together a benefit package and you will present it. And let's see what developers can do to answer that challenge. But that again is a trust obligation. And finally, we think that there should be some policy so that we can get some revenues in to assist our state agencies to do the exploration work that they need to do, because it is costly. And our state agencies have had budgets cut, especially DLNR. They don't have the necessary man and woman power to do this, but we need to ensure that in the future we do have that capacity, and we're here to assist our DLNR, DHHL, and others in developing that capacity. But in the meantime, share of royalty fees need to be returned for this purpose. We think that the state is required, is mandated to protect the public's energy security. The state has no alternative as a trustee. But we think that the state itself also needs to be involved in the process so that it can receive revenue stream. The trust asset is the geothermal, but once it is developed, the revenue stream also then would become an asset of the state. Right now, under our royalty scheme, 10% of gross is going to county, state, and OHA. 90% is going somewhere else. We'd like to turn that around and increase it so that we're having more revenues coming into our state with the share to help capacity building for the agencies. We do have our co-chairs of our Big Island Working Group. Richard Ha and Wally Ishibashi have been working with us. They come on all of our community meetings. They'll be coming with us to Maui. But Richard has been very informative as an agricultural spokesman and a farmer, and also Wally from the labor perspective. So let's hear from our co-chairs from the Big Island. We're all real proud of the work that they have done on Big Island.
Thank you, Millie.
Some copies here of our report if anybody needs one.
Just a little more introduction. Richard Ha is the chairman of the board of Kuakoa, founder and president of Hamakua Springs Farm, and he's co-chair of the Geothermal Working Group. Wally is a business agent for ILWU. He's chair of the Big Island Labor Alliance, and he's co-chair of the Geothermal Working Group. So welcome, and look forward to hearing from you here now.
Aloha. Thank you for the opportunity. Can give you guys some history on this working group. So this was a big issue, resurrecting this problem on geothermal on the Big Island. This is something that we fought back in the late 70s, early 80s, and was one tough subject to resurrect on the Big Island. It started from the Big Island Labor Alliance. I'm the chair, representing all the different labor organizations throughout the state, and we sit once a month on the Big Island. We experienced it 3 years ago, started when we had to start on concession bargaining, representing our workers throughout the island, especially in our tourism industry. The high cost of doing business caused a lot of cuts to our workers, and everything came off the workers' back. Cutting hours, cutting benefits, cutting pay, cut. We experienced that for the last 3 years. And this is one attempt to try and bring down the cost of operating a business in Hawaii. This is our attempt to try and reduce the cost of operating business. The high cost of electricity in the hotels, the pumping of water for our golf courses, the high cost of construction, everything was just causing a big burden to the workers. And lo and behold, last week again, we had layoffs, cutting hours, negotiations, and now again, my workers cannot afford to drive to work anymore. They living in their cars again because they cannot afford the gas. They cut the pay. They cannot afford to buy gas. And the jobs is on Waikoloa side, and they got to drive from Hilo if they like work. So that's the problem. This caused Senate Resolution 99 to help start and resurrect the geothermal issue on the Big Island. So that's the start, how this thing started. So we worked with Senator Kokobone and came up with this resolution. So let's go over this report real fast and give you guys some idea where we're going. We have our final report due this coming legislation session. So by the end of the year, we'll be putting that in. So the first thing, what is the Hawaii's biggest export? Is it pineapples, bananas, sugar cane? Any ideas? It's money. And you got to look at, this report was focused on a Big Island, and we wasn't looking statewide, but statewide is 7 to 8 billion. In Hawaii, just on a Big Island, it's $1 billion we spend on importing fossil fuels. So the demand for energy, and it continues to grow. It's not going to get any cheaper. By the end of the summer, coming into fall, you guys are going to be seeing your gas prices going above and beyond the history in Hawaii. So that's coming. And how can we ensure, how can we ensure affordable and adequate power supply? And our solution coming from the committee was to develop geothermal energy. So the Hawaii legislation researched geothermal energy, came up with Resolution 99, and the working group was established. And this is part of it, talking about our king and how the vision of our kingdom, and our king had the vision to try and bring in the technology of geothermal. Technology wasn't up to speed, so we ended up with hydro. Hydro was the replacement. But the plan and strategy never did change. We always wanted geothermal energy. So it's basic thing, and we appreciate PGV. PGV is our experts in the field. We were working with them on the Big Island and just trying to get, their mana'o on the whole geothermal thing. So it's some basic thing. Earth's core heats volcanic rock, heat is transferred to reservoirs, and you tap that hot water and generate electricity. Basic. And Hawaii Volcano Power, we're saying that we're going to be over that hot spot for the next 500 to 1 million years. So we get some time left to try and develop geothermal. And that's basic thing, using the hot water. Reinjection is on closed loop system that they drill and reinject back excess back into the ground. And again, people's views about energy differ, and sometimes views conflict. The solution we came up with was public awareness and consideration, just like we're doing, going around the island, going around the state, trying to bring public awareness and just consideration on the development and expansion of geothermal. So the geothermal working group represents the population of the Big Island. The group considers impact geothermal energy has on native Hawaiian culture. The group considers impacts on the environment. Hawaii is overwhelmingly dependent upon depleting supplies of fossil fuel. The Lloyd's of London warns its business clients to be prepared for $200 a barrel by 2013. High cost of energy means price hikes in all services and products. And again, after decades of war and spread, fascinating. We still depend upon unstable regions for our energy. To maintain current productions, we would require finding a new Saudi Arabia every 3 years. Energy demand will increase by 40% by 2030. Since Hawaii uses 90% of its power, this is of utmost concern. Ever since the first barrel of oil was removed, resource depletion of oil began. Oil needs 100 million years to regenerate. Depletion is inevitable. The implications are obvious. We must seek substitutes earlier rather than later. And we are the most oil-dependent state in the nation. It is urgent that we develop new energy resources in Hawaii. And again, it's our $1 billion just on the Big Island alone. Geothermal energy is one of Hawaii's main energy building blocks. Unlike solar and wind power, geothermal is a firm resource, always there. Hawaii's geothermal power plant has been producing electricity since 1993. And it's basic again, can change slightly. You can change that one too, yeah. So it's just part of the PGV system right here, Puna. Geothermal is our current plant. Real clean, real safe, real good. So the royalties, this is something that is discussed a lot, and trying to see how we can bring some money back to the state, back to the community, back to the islands, and back to the people. It's all about the rubber sleeper folks. It's what we call the people in need in Hawaii. It's the working class people, the families of Hawaii. So it's $12,456,000 was paid from the geothermal revenues, the royalties. So this is the findings of our group. Geothermal has the potential to be Big Island's primary energy source. On the Big Island, we have like 200 megawatts, the need. Yeah, we can do that. During the course of this year, we had a lot of discussion turned to the state problem. The problem with providing Oahu, Maui, and the rest of the state with firm-based power. So the discussion turned towards that, although our goal in our kuleana was just addressing the needs of the Big Island. And geothermal can neutralize the price volatility of petroleum fuel. Products that assist island agriculture can be cost-effective, produced with geothermal. That's what we're talking about. NH3, the ammonia, and fertilizers. So this is the working group's recommendations. Research the field work to catalog geothermal energy resources available across the Big Island. Research to analyze the impact of transitioning from petroleum power to geothermal. And reconsider how the royalties from geothermal are distributed. Designate geothermal funds for programs that benefit local communities. Designate geothermal funds for programs that further develop the resource. And I think that is important, because if you crash your boat or you end up in one deserted island in the middle of the Pacific and you got to survive on that island, the first thing you're going to do is analyze your resources. You're going to find where your coconut trees stay. You're going to find your water. You're going to find your food sources that you can use to survive in that situation. And lo and behold, we're in that situation right now. We're in the middle of the Pacific, and we're going to be stuck with a crisis that we will not be able to handle if we don't make drastic changes, and sooner the better. So this is how these apes survive the winter in Japan, using the hot springs to survive the cold winter months up there in Japan. So it look like some tourists now, Waikoloa, but that's okay. We all in this together. We all in the same boat. So we trying to see how we can expedite permitting processes and see how we can get legislators to help support us. So that's where we're at with the working group. I have some copies here if anybody interested. And turn it over to Brother Richard.
Aloha, everybody. What I wanted to do is explain, give you a little bit of a background. How come I moved here, tomato farmer, talking about energy? What happened was I flunked out of UH first. Then I got drafted. Then I ended up volunteering to go to OCS, and then I volunteered to go to Vietnam. And what happened there was walking around in the jungle. The unwritten rule was this: we all come back or nobody comes back. So that was a pretty good deal, you know. When you come back and think about it, that's kind of what we have to do under this situation, yeah. So I came back and I decided I wanted to go back to school and get serious this time. So I figured I wanted to go into business, so I majored in accounting so I could learn how to keep score. So we farmed 600 acres at Pepe Hill, bananas and hydroponic vegetables. But when we first started off, we didn't have any money, so we traded chicken manure for banana pula pula. Took us, you know, we've been in business for 30 years, and you all know farming is not easy. It's kind of risky. So the biggest skill you got to have is survival. Yeah, and what that means is you got to be able to switch gears and change fast whenever you gotta. As a matter of fact, it's second nature to us. Look into the future 5 years, figure out where we gotta be, and foster change. So about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than 5 years ago, we noticed all our input costs rising for our production costs. And then we learned it was due to oil. And since it was oil, I figured I better go learn about oil so that I can figure out how to position. So I went to the first Peak Oil Conference, which was in 2007 in Houston. What I learned there was pretty serious. It was the world had been using twice as much oil as it had been finding for 20 to 30 years. And sooner or later, something bad was going to happen. Then I skipped a year, then I went back again. And then it was the same thing. But now it's getting closer. Then I went to Washington, D.C., this last Peak Oil Conference. And by then, you started seeing a lot of reports in the mainstream press, organizations, German military, a lot of folks. And Wally mentioned Lloyd's of London. This year just came out July 4th. It's from Barron's. It says, be ready for $150 oil in the next 2 to 3 quarters. And for all the same reasons that when I went to the Peak Oil Conference, I kind of picked up. And I'm not a geologist or anything like that, but what I do when I go to these places is kind of figure out who is saying what, follow them for a while, see who's blowing smoke, and then who's credible. So I've been doing this for a while, so I actually know pretty much about this stuff. So some background. My dad's mom family comes from Maku, Kamahele family on the ocean in Puna. My dad's father came from Korea, and my mom her family came from Okinawa. You folks probably just noticed, last week, and as a matter of fact, the end of the month, Chairman Bernanke talked about what is happening in the economy. The QE2 just ended, and then what he reported was that the economy was in kind of spooky shape. He wasn't really quite sure what was going on. They expected more growth, but they really didn't have more growth. So right after that, they announced that they're going to take oil from the strategic reserve, pump them into the economy, and hopefully drop the oil price, and then the economy get going again, and maybe it'll help us. But today it went down to 90. Today it's back up to 97. So the bottom line is this: it's supply and demand already, and it's getting really close that we're going to drop down the backside. Yeah. So we're going to drop down the backside, and the problem about that is we've been level from 2004 to now. When we start dropping down, I think a lot of people are going to get really scared. Now, where does this bring us here in Hawaii? We have the geothermal resource, yeah? So the thing about the geothermal resource is that, out of 100% that we use to generate electricity, 85% is base power. So we use oil for that. Well, we could use geothermal for that. And the rest of them is intermittent, so we use wind and solar and whatever else we can, yeah? But we have that opportunity. And the cost of geothermal, you know, if you look in the report by Geothermics that did in 2005, they estimate the cost of geothermal to be about 10 cents. Now, you know, real simple, this is not rocket science here we're talking about. The cost of generating electricity from oil is about 20 cents. It's called avoided costs, and it's printed, you know, on the HECO website. It's 20 cents. If the cost of your electricity on Oahu is 30 cents, that means 10 cents is what it costs to run the grid. On the Big Island, it's 40 cents. Still the same 20 cents for avoided costs. That means 20 cents to run the grid. But it's understandable, the Big Island is big and less population, so it would be expensive. But try to figure this. If geothermal was 10 cents, and we replace the oil with geothermal, you add the 20 cents that it costs to run the Big Island grid, add the 10 cents to it, you get 30 cents. Actually, we would get we would be paying less money for electricity. Now, Oahu, it costs 10 cents to run the grid. If you took 10 cents for geothermal and say it costs you 10 cents to run the cable, it would bring you to 30 cents. But try to figure this. The 30 cents for both Oahu and the Big Island, give or take a little bit, will last for 500,000 years. Yeah? 600. 700,000. But the point is that it's stable. Now, the thing about, I talked to Carl Bonham, I asked him, hey, if we were to use geothermal as our primary base power for the state, and we all know it's cheapest of the base power, would it be fair to say that our economy would be more competitive to the rest of the world as oil prices rose? You say, yeah. And then by extension, our standard of living would rise. When we look at more homeless, that will take care of itself, actually, if we had cheap base power. But what the economists say, one of the most important things is volatility. And the volatility is what makes business not want to invest. It's scary. You lose money. Geothermal is stable. So what could probably happen is if we push hard and force ourselves to go geothermal with stable costs, actually, businesses from all over the world will come over here. People are going to start to look. Once we drop down the backside of the supply curve, people are going to start getting scared. So they're going to look for stability. And if we had that, or if we're moving that direction, we're going to have stability. We're going to have to put a toll gate out there, keep people out. But that's my whole thing is like Wally. We're mostly concerned about the rubber slipper folks. That's always my focus. And the reason that is because I'm a farmer. I cannot raise my workers' pay. So I got to think of other things that can help them. I'm always on that wavelength. Yeah. Now, I'll give you, HECO has a fiduciary duty to take care of the stockholders. It's just that way, and then they will say that. They always say that. They have to do that, otherwise they get sued. But look what happened. We come to a fork in the road. Now, because they got to keep their off-right plants running, they go toward biofuels instead of geothermal. Did we go down the right road? Yeah? And okay, now, I'm a farmer. Let me give you the farmer's perspective. About 4 or 5 years ago, they had meetings, with farmers and stuff like that. They wanted to know what the farmers thought. So we were in the meeting. Hey, how much are you guys gonna pay us for the biofuel? They didn't have an answer, so we figured it out ourselves. It goes like this. How much does a barrel of oil weigh? If it weighs 286 pounds, which is roughly, and oil is $100 a barrel, 1 pound is worth 36 cents. Yeah? So now if you're a farmer, you're telling yourself, you know what? I gotta grow something that they're gonna squeeze. How much pounds of stuff I gotta grow to squeeze 1 pound of oil, which I'm gonna get 38 cents for? If you gotta squeeze 4 pounds, you only gonna get 9 cents. The farmers never went back to another meeting because they figured it out.
You can't make money.
Yeah, might as well plant cucumber.
That's right.
So that was just biodiesel. Now, if you take the next step and say, oh, what about cellulosic biofuels, what we're talking about now? the first thing would give you a hint is the EPA had to redo their estimate for this year how much cellulosic biofuel was going to be produced in the nation. The estimate was 250 million. They changed it to 6.5 million. I mean, that's kind of plenty, right? And they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to research and invest in stuff like that. The stuff never worked. Yeah, I mean, that's why. Now, you know, come back to just the farm side, because there's technology, and then there's the farm side. Now, when you're producing stuff for the for biofuels, if the farmer is growing it, it's called feedstock. Yeah. So I asked, hey, how much you guys think you need the feedstock for? The answer was $75. Well, I happen to know that on the mainland, the farmers were getting $100 a ton for hay. They're not going to do something for $75, right?
Got it.
So what they did was, but the biofuel guys needed to get it for $45, so they needed a subsidy to bring it up to 100. Okay, so now somebody in Hawaii can do it for $75. I don't think so. Yeah, especially since they're making $300 for hay already. Yeah. So, but anyway, it's that's biofuel from the farmer's perspective. So what can happen? You gotta subsidize them, and who gonna pay? Us. Yeah. And the problem is, the folks on the lowest rung of the economic ladder are the ones gonna get their lights turned off first, and too often they're gonna be Hawaiians. And the problem there is where we're going, you know, uncertain future we're facing. We really need the aloha spirit, yeah. And we're not gonna be able to tell them, hey, you know what? When we could have gone the right way, we went this way, where the result is more expensive electricity, yeah. But on the other hand, as I was saying, what Carl Barnum was saying, that if we go down the road of geothermal, we can actually be looking for prosperity. You know, it's real. You see, what is happening in the world of oil? You see that people are getting rolling blackouts all over the place in various countries you know, all over the world. And the reason for it is because they're subsidizing the people so that they can get cheap oil and cheap food and stuff like that. But as oil prices rise, they cannot keep on subsidizing. So what does the company do? They shut down because they don't want to lose money. So now that is what is going on today, and you're starting to see this more and more and more. We got to move off that, and we got to move as fast as we can. And like, you know, we know going forward, what we need to do is we need to have have closer ties to our community. We got to make more friends. We got to be closer to our families. That's kind of where we got to go. So anyway, that's why I feel like I can say something, because I'm a farmer. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Well, at this time, I'd like to ask the members from IDG to join us for some Q&A. And we'll open up to the members, colleagues. Anybody have a question? If you direct it to whoever you'd like to direct it to.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's kind of where the legislature is at now. You know, we passed, I feel, some really forward pieces of legislation. We passed SB 2, which is now all the land inventories. You know, so things are, DLNR now is going to be the repository of all of those inventories, you know, which is critical. It not only includes the public lands, but also includes the public trust lands, which is what we're kind of talking about here. I think the Public Lands Development Corporation, if you have an opportunity to read the bill, it is already set up to address a lot of what was discussed here. The Water Land Committee, and I'm representing our committee in this capacity on this, you know, on this informational briefing, is that we've already met with financial institutions to see as to whether or not they're willing to step forward, you know, to help the state. The bottom line is we kind of divided it up into thirds. The state actually has 2/3 of the equation, simply because we have the lands, plus we have the entitlements, which are your permits, so on and so forth.